Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Allegra, we had this massive curveball on AI this week.
Absolutely huge. I mean, on Monday when I was writing the readout, every hour seemed to be a sort of end of the world headline. The biggest drop for NVIDIA in market history, or that DeepSeek had to shut to new users. It just kept coming.
It's the fact that DeepSeek over the weekend came in with this lower cost AI model. So it's using cheaper chips than some of the other models that we're looking at. And so people are suddenly freaking out and saying, if you can do the same for cheaper, then China has a massive advantage compared to the US companies.
Yeah, it was powerfully called a Sputnik moment. So the analogy there being 1957 when the US watched Russia put a satellite in space and realized that they'd been outclassed. And that Sputnik moment has become this kind of shorthand for sort of this huge game changer in technology, but also geopolitics.
And remember, I mean, DeepSeek is a Chinese artificial intelligence startup that's just over 1 year old. It's quite incredible. So there's consternation.
It's an amazing David and Goliath story, isn't it?
Welcome to the City of London.
The City of London.
The next station is Bank. Please mind the gap between the train and the platform.
The financial heart of the country.
The City.
The City.
Welcome to In the City.
Stand clear of the doors, please.
I'm Francine Lacqua.
I'm Allegra Stratton.
So this week we're going to unpack the DeepSeek news, what it means for the AI race, and of course how the UK, with its own AI ambitions, fits into all of this. And with us, Parmy Olson, Bloomberg Opinion columnist covering technology and author of the great book Supremacy, AI, ChatGPT, and the Race That Will Change the World, which also won the Financial Times and Schroders Business Book of the Year Award in 2024. So Parmy, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
And you kind of saw this coming. I mean, in this AI race, there was, I guess, an understanding that the AI in the US was so far along. And then massive curveball this week. China's not that far behind. They can do the same on the cheap.
Yeah, I think what happened with DeepSeek really just shows that nothing is set in stone with AI, and we can still have surprises come out of the woodwork. The timing is really interesting because just a few weeks ago, there was a lot in the news about how AI companies from OpenAI, even the head of Google DeepMind, were all saying publicly, actually, the formula that we've been using based on so-called scaling laws is starting to have diminishing returns. We're not developing as quickly our AI models as we did before. It's slowing down. If you throw a whole lot of very powerful chips and put them together with a whole lot of data and a whole lot of energy, you get a really powerful AI model. And the more you add to that mix, the more powerful the AI model would get. But that just wasn't the case anymore. And what DeepSeek has shown is that actually there is a workaround. There is a way to build a model that is, according to the people who have vetted their model, as good as ChatGPT, but for a fraction of the cost, a fraction of the chips and the resources. So in one way, that's very distressing for people in Silicon Valley because it makes it look like all the money they've poured into AI has just been a big old waste. On the other hand, it shows, well, there's some hope because we were all worried about these scaling laws just a few weeks ago.
So, Parmy, you used that word distressing. For your contacts in Silicon Valley, what is going on right now? What are they having huge meetings saying everything we thought we understood, we have to revise, the numbers we have to revise?
Well, I think this week is earnings week.
Yeah.
And so the likes of Mark Zuckerberg and, Satya Nadella, all the heads of the big tech firms are going to be talking about how much they're spending on AI. And the CapEx has been huge every quarter for the last few quarters. And investors have generally been okay with that because there's been this vision. Now, I think with DeepSeek showing, well, actually, maybe you don't need all that much CapEx spending. I think that's where a lot of the panic is, how they're going to recommunicate that to their investors.
But Parmy, how is it possible that the Chinese have such an advantage to do the same technology on the cheap?
Well, it's funny you use the word advantage because they started with a disadvantage, which was sanctions from the U.S. They weren't able to get the high-end chips and the same level of high-end chips from NVIDIA, known as GPUs, that Microsoft and Google and OpenAI could get. So there's this kind of prevailing theory in technology and in innovation that actually when you limit yourself, it forces you to be more creative, to think out of the box. And that seems to be just what's happened in China. There wasn't really an advantage.
Parmy, how much do we know about DeepSeek and the fact that I guess it's not government backed, or is it? I mean, could they be getting a lot more funds than we think? And I've always been under the impression that the Chinese have so much more data available because of the number of people living in the country.
Yeah.
And because the government just takes the data. And so it's easier, in some way to basically use this to model some of the AI.
Yes, you could say that. But at the same time, Chinese companies for the last decade have not been very strong with language models. They've been great at recognizing faces because of the surveillance mandate by the government. So you've got lots of face recognition companies. The best in the world are in China. With DeepSeek, they've said that the budget they used for this new model they built was $6 million. That's about what a Google executive gets paid every year. This is like
you put that
really
in your column yesterday.
Yes,
It's such a killer fact.
But I mean, it's literally a fraction of what Google and OpenAI are paying for their own equivalent models. It's interesting you mentioned some of these kind of theories that are floating around, like, is it possible? How could they? I think people are just stumped and stunned, and we're grasping for answers. Even experts that I've been speaking to in the last 24 hours, they don't really want to talk about it because they don't really have predictions, or it's hard to parse through all the noise right now because this has been such a shock to the system. But those who have been working with open source AI say, actually, we've known this is coming. Open source models have been getting better. Meta, Mark Zuckerberg's company, his approach to AI has been to open source it. Strictly, it's not. Some people say it's not really open source, but essentially it's free. And those models have been getting as good as OpenAI's models. So you could sort of see this coming. I think people just didn't expect it to come from China.
Where does this all shake down? I mean, yesterday, NVIDIA, the crash was bigger than the entire amount. Did you write this? Somebody wrote the amount they lost yesterday was bigger than all of the money that Donald Trump managed to get all the AI companies to put in last week, 500 billion or whatever, right?
Yeah, right.
So where does this level out in terms of, if you are a Silicon Valley company, you've got your earnings this week, they'll obviously be looking to get through that. But the other side, in 6 months and so on, we hear what you're saying about a lot of the experts you speak to feeling it's way too early to say. But it feels like it's hard to see that those massive numbers that Silicon Valley kick around are sustainable medium term.
And that's actually what the critics of the AI industry have been saying for some time, that we're in a bubble, that there's way too much money being spent on this. And so in some ways, what happened to the NASDAQ yesterday, you could call it a healthy correction to the market, that the hype has been way overblown. But at the same time, an optimistic way of looking at the situation, if you're in Silicon Valley, is, well, hang on, DeepSeek is open source. They are literally posting their secret sauce on the internet. So there's no reason why Google and Facebook can't copy their methods and use them with all that extra infrastructure and chips that they've got.
Sure, but then there's no reason why, if you're a shareholder, you don't say, given it's on the internet, why does it cost you this much?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the one thing that Meta and Google and OpenAI can say is, well, we're going to make something even better now because we've got this new information. We're going to learn what we can from DeepSeek. I think the next few months for them are just going to be really difficult, especially this week.
Parmy, so again, it's my understanding. I keep on saying it's my understanding because I'm not sure what we're certain about anymore or not, given the week that we've had.
I think that's fair,
but
Fran.
it was my understanding that, one of the reasons why it was so difficult for the Chinese to agree to sell TikTok in the US was that they didn't want to give the algorithm to anyone who would buy it.
Mm-hmm.
So why would DeepSeek have an open? I mean, is it really open, or are they keeping parts for themselves?
No, as far as I know, it's open. It's out there. Yeah, you can access it.
So this changes everything for everyone.
Potentially, yeah. And if you look at some of the comments made by the founder and the CEO of DeepSeek, he's talked about wanting to move into this more collaborative way of working with the West, and how in the past they in China would have to wait for innovation to come from Silicon Valley and then ride on the coattails. And they want to kind of bring things into a new kind of era. And that might feel kind of awkward in the West, but you have to remember that the culture in China is generally more collaborative. I can't see inside his head and what the true motivation is, but I think there is something genuine about that.
Let's look at the politics for a second in America. Obviously, Donald Trump stood up a week ago and said, "Going to usher in this golden age." What will they, in as much as anyone can think into the Trump White House, but what will they be thinking right now? Will they be saying, "Right, let's go further, let's go faster"? Of course they will. You're nodding your head.
I think so. I think Trump is the kind of person that doubles down, and his mandate for a while has been, America first, and let's make sure we're ahead of China. And that's, I think, what has excited everyone in Silicon Valley about the potential loosening of regulations, even the potential lighter touch regulation on the part of antitrust. There's been this looming threat of a breakup of Google. But if a breakup of Google makes America's industrial strategy, or just American companies, weaker in the face of China, maybe that won't happen after all. So I can't see. Honestly, I'm not sure what Donald Trump's policy is going to be here. I'm sure he'll continue to push forward with Stargate, where Elon Musk fits in all of this as someone who is a massive AI safety advocate, but who still has not spoken up about that, seemingly, to Trump, that he's still a wild card in all that.
When do people start paying for these services? Does it only become effective when I start paying, I don't know, $5.99 per week to use?
I think this is kind of like the big question mark that is hanging over big tech right now is, will they truly be able to monetize generative AI? Because yes, OpenAI made something like $5 billion in revenue, but it also lost $7 billion. So even it is struggling to make a profit, and its path to profit is unclear. And yes, people pay for ChatGPT and businesses pay for ChatGPT, but a lot of businesses have experimented with it and just kind of put it aside, saying we don't think it's really going to help us. So it's still an open question. And I think, in a way, DeepSeek maybe will encourage more experimentation by businesses, because there's not this big initial outlay. It's like, well, we'll just try it. It's free. No big costs there. But yeah, I don't think anyone's really answered that yet. And that's why people say we're in a bubble. And if they don't answer it, then that bubble will pop.
I loved your book. And it
thank you.
It talks about supremacy and this fight between individuals that are very well known and trying to get to the top. So you know a lot of these players, up close. Who do you think is more stressed this week?
100%. The most stressed person right now is Sam Altman, because his entire company's business model is based on selling a foundation model, and he doesn't have anything else. At least if you're Google, you have all the other stuff in your business. If you're Microsoft, you've got all the other enterprise stuff that you're doing and the cloud business. Same with Amazon, same with Apple. But OpenAI, also Anthropic, but OpenAI especially, if they're being completely undercut by another firm in China, I think the thing that really freaked people out this weekend wasn't just the fact that the DeepSeek model was so good, but that it was so popular. It's number 1 on the App Store, on the iPhone App Store. It's number 5 on Google Play. So I think that's a big problem for OpenAI.
Moving on from the agony of these tech bros, just talking about AI safety. And I know I always feel slightly parochial when we bring it back to the UK, but we're sitting in the city of London. And Keir Starmer has made a play, not as recently as Donald Trump, but a few weeks back, that he still wants the UK, like Rishi Sunak wants the UK, to be this kind of beacon of AI safety, and that there's some kind of market niche that can be carved out. From my perspective, it looks harder and harder to see how that now works, where you've got the two big countries racing ahead. Or does it? Give us reasons to be optimistic.
Okay, so I think, first of all, I thought Keir Starmer's AI Opportunities Action Plan from the other week was way too broad, and he should have narrowed it down to just a few things. It was very ambitious. I think he should really play up the UK's role as a safety regulator, because if you look at the number of people who work for the government here on AI safety, there's like about 150 people working at the AI Safety Institute in London. That's more than the number of people working in Brussels on the same thing where they're building this AI Act. So there's a lot of expertise, partly because we have DeepMind here. There's just a lot of talent, and some of those people are crossing over and helping the civil service. And I think the UK, when it comes to how Britain has regulated tech in the past, it's been very smart, it's been very practical, pragmatic, and it's put out laws that American states have copied. Okay. It's quick, it's nimble. So I have a lot of faith in what the UK can do there. As when it comes to innovation, there's just a ton of startups here. Again, we've got DeepMind. So I think when you have clear regulations in place, and by the way, I think the British government, it is planning to write up its own legislation on AI safety. They haven't done it yet.
But just to be clear, Parmy, how does that work when you've got two countries going for it, going as hard as they can, with, as you said earlier, America making a play of less regulation?
But I like to push back on that, because America innovates and Britain and Europe regulate. America, do they really innovate? I mean, look at where they are today. Look who just out-innovated them. It's China. If you look at Facebook, they're not innovative. They copy companies. They buy companies. That's what they've been doing to AI startups in Silicon Valley. All the most promising ones have been acqui-hired by the big guns. And so I think, actually, DeepSeek, in a way, points to some real optimism. You said that America's really gunning for it because they have so much money. And yeah, maybe we don't have those resources here, but DeepSeek has shown you don't need that. You just need innovation, you need smart ideas, you need to think out of the box, think creatively, and open source might be,
that's a really powerful point that, there's a kind of London model or a UK model that DeepSeek is charting out. And also the other important point, sort of to contradict myself, is that the UK point or position has always been that we will regulate less than the EU, and so being that kind of more palatable version.
And the big focus on growth, you've heard that from the CMA, you've heard that from regulators here. It's all about growth, and let's support the industry here.
Parmy, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of In the City from Bloomberg. It was hosted by me, Allegra Stratton, and Francine Lacqua. It was produced by Summer Sardi and Moses Andam. Sound design by Blake Maples. Special thanks to Parmy Olson. Please subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to podcasts.